Welcome back to the Growing Band Director Podcast. Welcome to grade 3. We're here for part 5 of 6 parts, if I can get this right. 5 and 6 are going to be grade 3 rep, and I'm here with one of the experts and top writers around. This is Terry White. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I don't know about the expert.
Craig Skeffington wasn't available, so
I just happen to have lived longer and made many more mistakes than most people.
Yeah. So we are going after charts that people have recommended, and you and I like, and we just think is good for great rep. So we talk about kind of the cornerstone of a great program being relationships with kids, programming great repertoire, and striving for excellence. Like those 3 things are like, if you can do all 3 of those things, your program's probably pretty good. So obviously this whole series is in the programming great literature. So we have about 50 charts between all 6 of these videos that we're checking out and putting out there. And I think all of them are good charts. So I'm hoping people listen not only to just, oh, I'm a high school teacher, I'm listening to grade 3. If this is the first one you're listening to, listen to the grade 2s, listen to the grade 1s, because they all have great music.
Sure. And you'll find if you're a high school director and you have a good, strong program, there's plenty of grade 2 material that you could have at your disposal. We were just mentioning that you're always asked to have to perform on short notice. And that's, you don't have time to run up to the library or order a new chart that you should have. Throw it out there for sight reading material, have it in the book, ready to go. Kids will have fun playing it, and you'll be less stressed.
And you judge as much as anybody. How often have you written, there's not enough notes in this program for this band?
Never.
Yeah.
Just the opposite. In fact, the kids are really struggling to get through the chart. Can't even think about intonation and balance. They're chasing notes all over the place. So
yeah. So if you, and I'm not calling anybody out here, but if you think you're a grade 3 band, how about this year you try all grade 2 and get them to sound like the recording?
Well, think of Duke Ellington's band, Mood Indigo. What grade level would that be? 2?
Mm-hmm.
There's some challenges in some of those. I mean, excluding all the doublings in this part, there's a lot of Basie and Duke stuff that's doesn't even reach the grade 3 level. A lot of the Cute, Teddy the Toad, Little Darlin', technically they're not that hard, but I mean, there's obviously a lot of challenges beyond the technical part of it. So technical skills are not really what's being evaluated. Make some music. That's what's important.
Yeah. Stop chasing all the notes.
Absolutely.
It's good to challenge your kids. So there's a time and a place for pushing them, but in general, if the kids don't sound close to the recording, probably aim a little lower. So
yeah, I mean, there are some bands out there, and we incredible bands that could play 3 grade 5 charts easily. I thought of one band, I won't mention the name, but terrific band, wonderful band director. The festival, when we got the program lineup, the director came up and said, we had to change these 2 tunes. We lost our lead trombone player this afternoon. And I'm thinking I'd be going off with a heart attack. And they substituted 2 other tunes that were equally as difficult and played just as well. And that was switching trombone parts around. And incredible band.
Yeah.
But they had built their library, so they had some things to fall back on.
Right. So the first chart we're going to do is by a great writer that we both like and know, Paul Baker. And if you like Paul's stuff, I think episode number 74 was with Paul Baker and I. And we did a lot of, I think, 10 of his charts, and there's a lot of great charts. What's your favorite Paul Baker chart?
This one, the Basies Beat. Now, my first one I was exposed to, I didn't really know anything about Paul. I saw his name listed on some things, but Orange Drank. Yeah. I stumbled across that chart, and it's a hoot. I love that chart. I've done it at Jazz All States because it's fun to play. Yeah. And I've become a huge fan of his charts and his writing, especially from the educational standpoint.
So you've used Basies Beat before?
I used it, I believe it was last year at the festival.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch upon, I limited to four charts. So I wanted to touch upon the styles of some big bands. So obviously you want to do Basie if you can, and Duke, and possibly Kenton. So when I was looking around at the various Basie charts, there was plenty I could find. But this one hit all the boxes in terms of everything about the style of Basie, and it just swings and is very, very accessible. And I don't mean easy. It's just that when
playable.
He writes figures that just make sense, and you fall right into. You almost can't mess up the rhythm. You know?
So here's Basie's Beat, Paul Baker. in talking with Paul Baker, his belief is, first of all, always listen to the shout chorus of a tune before you choose it, because sometimes demos, we were preparing all these videos or recordings for that, and he said make sure you keep in the shout chorus, because a lot of times that's where the chart's made. And he always likes to feature every section within every chart.
Well, that goes back to the old days when we would get our demos on these little plastic vinyl. This is even before cassette recordings. And you'd listen to them. You had to put a quarter on them because they keep them from spinning around on the turntable. And they always faded out just right before they modulated to G flat, or the trumpet had hit a double G.
Because they wanted you to buy the chart.
Of course. So, and then you know, they would tell you it's because of lack of time on the recording. You buy the chart and all of a sudden you're in G flat. Things are more truthful nowadays.
Yeah. Okay. So the next chart is an authentic Benny Carter chart done as part of the Kansas City Suite with Count Basie. This is called Meetin' Time. This is gospel flavored in C major that features the trombone section.
And there's another example of kids don't have to chase a lot of notes to put this together.
Great music.
And to learn to lay back. You know, I think when you think about the Basie, there's a style, you know, that we're trying to have the kids learn. And think of all the different writers, from Frank West, Frank Foster, you know, Sammy Nestico, all of those guys that wrote, but they wrote in this Basie style. So you knew it was a Basie chart, even though they were all unique as writers. And Benny Carter's the same.
One of the things that a lot of teachers do, and I do it a lot, and I'm hoping this might help other teachers too, is if you're playing a chart like this, that's an authentic chart, you know, if you have speakers loud enough, you know, have it playing, and have your trumpet section play along with the Basie band, right? So, because there's nothing like playing along with the recording and trying to match it exactly. And then of course your goal is to ultimately put your own spin on that take. But I think the first step is playing with the recording helps a lot.
And some of these charts, depending on the publisher, you might want to check out the rhythm section. I think all the bass parts are generally notated.
Yep.
And piano parts might be sparse.
They're not usually notated. They're sparse, but they're notated.
Yeah, they're not overwritten. In other words,
but it's usually on these. They're exactly what Basie played.
Right. And so, you know, you might have to do a few things. I know one publisher, the drum parts were, you know, just play time or whatever. So, and for younger kids, it'll take them a long time to know the chart well enough. So take out a pencil and write some of the rhythmic figures on the part before.
Yep.
You know, they teach them the difference between the rhythm that you want them to play and the setup that they need. You know, I'll say to a drummer, you know, the brass players are in on 2. They need 1. You've got to give them something on 1 to do that. So you put that right in the part, and you teach them all those different terms. That's just part of learning.
Some people won't play some of these Count Basie charts because they maybe have a younger piano player, but actually a lot of these piano parts are really easy,
very
and
accessible.
notated. And if they just practice a single line, they can do it. So, all right, here's Meetin' Time. even though there's 4 trombone parts, that's just a trombone section sound. You know, so much unison in that, and there's all the muted stuff, little trumpet solo, little tenor solo, and most of those recordings, most of the solos of those recordings are written down on the solos as well, which so kids can play those or play their own stuff. But
and again,
accessible.
It's like you say, it's accessible. And at some point, I would challenge the kids to say, you know, you just sat out for 16 bars, you didn't have anything to play. What were you listening to? And I know oftentimes I've heard Aaron Bush come into rehearsal at a festival recently, and he telling me, listen to the bass, and especially if if you're not playing a part, don't just veg out for 16 bars. Listen to the music and understand what other people are playing, and especially listen for the time.
The next chart we're gonna I want to recommend people check out. Again, we don't have the score and sound on this one, so we can't play it, but I wanted to include it because it's one of my favorite charts. It's the Dave Bardoon chart on Indiana, which is a great chart if you want a grade 1.5 brass part, but you want a grade 3 saxophone part. So if that sounds good to you, check out the Indiana chart by Dave Bardoon. I believe it's the old style blue cover, like light blue cover. It's great. You know, it's a challenging saxophone part, but the brass really take the background. I think there's a little written piano solo or something too. So
yeah, it's got great chord changes, especially the turnarounds. Very, very hip. Limited brass ranges, and it's like the Groove and Hard chart. You know, if they're out of print, but there's certainly enough copies sold somewhere there, you can find it, and but ask around and put it out there. What's the not your growing band director site? Oh, that's one possibility. There's another band director site that I'm on that people are always throwing those questions out there. Hey, I'm looking for this. I'm looking for that. There's also
on Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a Facebook big band website, and people are always looking for parts to out of print charts and so forth. But great way to easily get that request out there. Somebody's liable to come up with it.
We had a music educator named David recommend a chart by Mike Lewis called One More for the Count. And again, I wanted to put it on there, even though we couldn't get the score and sound for it, because it's a great chart. It's another one similar to Basies Beat by Paul Baker, which is like very Count Basie like, only super playable.
Yeah, and it's another option for directors, who, especially veteran directors that have been around for a while, and you want to do something that's refreshing for you as well, and not the same old. There's a story that I heard back in the day with the Boston Pops, and there was one particular thing that they did traditionally year after year, but when it first came out, there was a mistake like in the second clarinet part, and it had been corrected. It was just a misprint. But 15, 20 years later, Arthur Fiedler still would stop and point out that mistake because he was just so ingrained to do it, even though it was well marked and nobody was making the mistake. And we as directors, you can almost rehearse some of these things in your sleep because you've been doing it for so long. You need to stay refreshed, and it'd be great for the kids too. I love Little Darlin', but I've been around enough so that I can move on and do something similar to that. And if you're a younger band director who haven't done it, then you need to do that. So you don't always have to go to the new issues catalog that come out. They're great charts.
Yep.
But all these tunes on this list have been withstood the test of time.
Yep. So the next tune is also a Basie tune. This is Sammy Nestico. This is straight ahead Orange Sherbet. And Orange Sherbet is based on Just Friends, correct?
Correct.
Yes. All right, I got that. So it's based on the chord changes to Just Friends. If you do it the way it's, actually, I don't have this. I should probably look at the score before I say this. I just featured a piano player on this, but it might be trumpet. I think it's trumpet solo. You have that written?
Yes, solos for trumpet and piano.
Okay. Yeah. I just did piano, I think, the way I did it.
And I'm not sure if it's part of the Kendor convertibles.
It's not the one I have.
Okay.
They might have another one, but
okay. But it's a great tune, and I've done it with high school kids. Very accessible.
Yep.
And again, it goes back to, if you want to teach Basie style, this Basie style with a lot of different writers. Sammy Nestico being primary one that towards the end of the Basie band's career with Basie, that's when the publishers were starting to get, hey, we can publish some of this stuff for kids and make it accessible. So,
and Orange Sherbet, wasn't that his favorite ice cream? Basie, isn't that why it was called that?
Yeah.
Great. Here's Orange Sherbet, Sammy Nestico.
that chart has limited articulations in it. It's a great opportunity to discuss the articulations and have the kids actually write them in. It also has a lot of successive short quarter notes that I don't know what, I can't remember if they're marked with a marcato or not. That's how I would interpret it. Dot, dot. Tell the kids it's a fat short note. And you can.
Yeah, that's how they're written.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you can have the kids understand, start with, okay, in swing, which beats do we emphasize? Well, 2 and 4, right? Follow the hi-hat. And then if you have successive short notes, you're not going to play them equal. D dot, D dot. You're gonna nudge those just a little bit.
And that comes up a lot. D dot dot, D dot, do dot dot.
And some people would have the kids maybe color in the marcato. No, get them to understand the style.
Yep.
And then it just becomes second nature.
There are some stuff on this chart that is not written correctly, which kind of brings us to a whole other thing. But so first of all, always tongue a note before a rest. That's like one of my things. And on this one, you'll see a lot of one and as part of a longer line, and it's all slurred instead of doing a jazz articulation, or at the very least tonguing the last note. Because if you end with that slurred note, it's just
you see that a lot, especially with saxophones. They'll run a slur into an accent. And I'll say, okay, who in this room can tongue and slur at the same time?
Yeah.
And that falls upon editors and engravers.
So I think a really good way, if people are like, well, wait a minute, I thought I had to play what's on the paper. If that's new for you, then all you have to do is listen to the good recording and follow the lead lines, alto, trumpet, trombone, whatever. And whatever you hear them playing that's different, stop the recording and then rewrite what's on their part. So you're playing what they're actually, you're reading what they're actually playing.
Right.
Take the time to do it.
Yeah, that's really important. When you deal with someone of the reputation of Sammy Nestico, I mean, he's going to send in the chart and then they'll deal with it after that. Where most of us today, we have to send things in that are almost print ready. Then the engraver takes it and tweaks it and does his thing. So there are times when I'll have certain articulations and the editor will go back, what do you think about putting this there instead of this one? And what's your thinking on that? It's important. And as one editor said to me, when it's in print, it's forever.
Yep.
So if it's not what you want, you got to make it what you want. So
the next chart is also from the Basies style. This is arranged by Greg Yazinitsky, called Shiny Stockings. This is a grade 3, starts off with a little bit of saxophone a cappella, but then uses all the traditional things that we know from Shiny Stockings. And the shout is great on this. And, again, it's a 5-minute chart, so it gets a little windy. You might even split lead trumpet. It doesn't go above G, but to get it to really swing, I would recommend using a guitar player if you got one to get that because it's just a different sound if you don't have it.
Sure, I agree. And it's a great reduction of that Frank Foster chart.
Yeah.
Sometimes when people do those reductions, they don't always work. It's unless you're going to take a totally different take on a classic tune, like Mike did earlier on the Little Sunflower. That's a totally different take, and it really works. If you're going to try to emulate the same style, but you're just going to make it a little more accessible for kids, that's challenging as all get out. And it has a lot to do with how you write the inner voices.
And again, you could have a band that could play grade 5, but if you want a good opening swing chart and you want to really teach style, do this grade 3 version, and it's great. So here's Shiny Stockings, arranged by Greg Yazinitsky. That's such a great chart. You know, listening back to it brings back a lot of memories. So we're going to share some things more about that chart that we've done in the past. But one thing that comes to mind is like the ability to play really soft in the part before the shout. And that recording wasn't even super soft. Like I think it says piano, but it should be softer than what they played. And so you can play almost inaudibly and have the drummer squeeze the hi-hat and just play the tick, tick, tick on the hi-hat with nothing else. And then on the shout, I've had the drummer do fills one time, and then the second time just play a backbeat, right? It just gives it more punch. I told the kids the first time on the shout, we're going to play like 95%, but then save it for the second time. So it really has a, you know, that push on the crowd of the really soft to the really loud.
Yeah, I often will tell kids that. I mean, in directors, it's like, okay, if this section's going to repeat and it's a shout chorus, you know, you don't max out the first time. You have nowhere to go on the second time. And it could just be a matter of a different energy level. You notice on the demo recording, it's great where the drummer's using quarter notes a lot instead of just ding, ding, a ding. He's just laying down the quarter notes is perfect. And the other thing, oftentimes at festivals, we'll see bands, middle school and high school bands, playing with mutes, particularly Harman and cut mutes. And I'm always asking, you've got to provide more air to fight through that resistance.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times they just think it's a change of color.
Yeah.
Well, it is. And the initial thing was, well, it's to make things sound softer because of the term mute. Yeah. I said, well, no, we're changing the color here. Yeah. So push some air through there.
You mentioned Harman, like you need a good Harman mute. You know, like if you play a bad Harman mute and try to play below the staff, you can't do it. But get the Joe Rao bubble Harman mutes, and those things they sizzle.
Of all the years that I've been around, I can only think of maybe one time, and it was during a show where I had to use the stem. Usually you unwrap the Harman mute and throw away the stem. But I learned the hard way not to do that. Just tuck it somewhere in the do-wacka-do sound. And and of course, you know, you can always tell a real solid Harman mute with a pro. Just look at all the dents in it. You know, it's been around a long time and they don't want to get rid of it.
Or they loaned it to a lot of middle school kids. That's happened to me too. A couple more things on that chart, just from personal experience, things I did. When it's softer like that, letting the bass player lead the time instead of the drummer, that's a cool approach. Also, that saxophone intro, sorry, Greg, when I did that, I had no saxes and just had my piano player play it as like the Count Basie tip of the cap. And that worked really well. And then lastly, on that sax solo, which is such a playable, great solo, you can also take the lead alto part, write it out for trumpet, and have a kid play flugel on it. I learned that so many years ago from Craig Skeffington. And it's just such a great sound.
The thing with the piano, you know, if you're not sure of your skills to rewrite something like that, you know, and someone's listening to this and saying, that's a great shot, I'd like to do it. And I like that idea about the piano playing in the beginning.
All I did was just transpose it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, or get a hold of a piano player. I mean, it's not going to, you know, take them much time at all. Give them the first page of the score. Say, can you make this work for the piano in here? You know, a lot of people would be willing to do that.
I probably should have done that. I literally just transposed it on my own and like wrote it out and said, here, kid, learn this. All right. Two more charts. Next chart is another Mark Taylor chart. This is features your drummer on brushes and lots of unison band on this. This is on a great chart tune made famous by Chet Baker and a lot of other people called There Will Never Be Another You. I love this chart. That solo is awesome.
Yeah, it's all in unison, so it's great, and the ending is so creative. You know, it's what a wonderful chart that there are so many bands that could play that and really sound good. You know, it's accessible.
And they provide a solo sheet for all the instruments. So again, there's a little bit of chord changes, but it's in the traditional key of E flat. And that one had trombone, but on the score, it's actually not written in any of them.
I mean, a really, really good middle school band
Yep.
could play that, but I think it'd be more suited for high school.
Because it's all about, I mean, they should be singing that music. They should be dancing to it. They should be moving to get that to really lock in.
And there's a chart that could do double duty. You could play that at a festival and still have it in your book for, you know, the community performance.
That could be your middle tune. That could be your first tune. Like,
Right.
it would work for either one of them.
Right.
You know, it doesn't fill the improv need, like have a bunch of kids blow on it. But
You know, I think if you have a drummer who isn't proficient with drums, this would be a good challenge for them. And you could probably
you mean proficient with brushes?
Brushes, I mean.
A drummer who's not
drums, yeah.
proficient with
They could get away with sticks, where I heard a band try to play cute with sticks, and that doesn't work at all with that particular tune. Obviously, the brushes are far more effective here,
Yep.
and you know, and bite the bullet. They got to learn it sometime.
Don't play the cymbals with the brushes. Don't go ding 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 on the
No.
cymbal because you can't hear it. And also, the brushes can be brought out 3/4 of the way, not all the way, because it gives you like more of a stick sound. So play with how much of the brushes are out.
And I've heard some middle school bands will play a ballad, not cute or anything like this, but it's a ballad where they'll play brushes and they're going ding, 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 ding. You can't hear anything. You hear the hi-hat, hopefully. But I suggested them, if you're not proficient with brushes, use the hot rods. That way it's not as hard as sticks playing as that, but at least you'll be able to hear.
What I was taught with that is you take that same pattern and just put it on the snare drum with the ding ding a ding, so you hear that, and then you stir with
Right.
the other hand.
Yeah, I asked a drummer, you know, in the past year, it was curious, you know, I wanted to use the proper terminology about stirring technique and all of that stuff. And it really was pretty easy to understand. I mean, I would have to practice quite a while to be able to accomplish that, but it's not tough to figure out.
Yep. All right, we're on to our last chart, which is great planning on my part because this is probably my favorite chart of all time. I think this is Creole Love Call by Duke Ellington, arranged by Mark Taylor at the grade 3. This checks, as Terry would say, all the boxes. This is a blues. This is New Orleans jazz style. This is Duke Ellington. You're using plunger mutes. There's history in it. It's accessible. It swings out the door. It's just a great chart. So here is Creole Love Call. We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.